This is a video on how to create a tab plugin for Logviewer. As you can see, I've downloaded the Logviewer program from the downloads page of the project website. I've unzipped it here, and this is just what users click to start the program, like so. Let's see, and I've created the project in NetBeans. You can use any IDE, but I use NetBeans because it's convenient and it has a GUI builder. Anyways, what I do is I create a regular, very simple Java project. To the libraries, I need to add 2 files to make so that I can actually develop a plugin. The first file I need is from the Logviewer distribution. That would be logviewer.jar. The second file I need is from the lib folder in that same folder, jspf.core jar. So these are the 2 files that every tab plugin must have in order to have access to the Logviewer API. Now every tab plugin consists of a minimum of 3 files. You could have more files, each doing different things, but you need a minimum of 3 required files. The first one, whatever you call it, it needs to be an empty public interface. There's nothing in here, so it needs to be an empty public interface that extends tab factory. Tab factory is located in this package from logviewer.jar. But the first file is an empty interface that extends tab factory. Tab factory is itself an interface. So you need to, the next file you need is a class that implements all the abstract methods. So you need a class that implements that empty interface you just created. So I created sample factory, and sample factory implements sample factory. You also need to remember that above this class, the line above, you need to write @plugin implementation. This tells Logviewer that it's a plugin, and you have to import this from this package, which is from this jar. So don't forget this line above the class that implements that empty interface that you created. Otherwise it won't work. Okay, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 methods that you need to be familiar with. 4 of these you have to implement. The 5th is toString. That's not an abstract interface, but still you should implement it because it is used. Now I'll explain what each one of these do. The first one is getTabName. What getTabName does is it returns a string that's used to display the tab name when the tab is open. So in this case, I have the sample tab. I'm opening it. Sample tab name is displayed up here. That was specified by returning sample tab name in this function. The second one is toString. toString is used to display the tab in the plugins lists. It's always good to have the name of the plugin followed by a short little description, but you can do whatever you want. So right here, I returned that in toString. The next method you need to know is getDependencies. Now it's most likely that whatever tab plugin you're creating will use external libraries. Especially if it's doing something complicated, it will use external libraries, external jars. You need to specify the entire file path of these external jars, of every external jar, so that Logviewer can load these external jars before it loads the plugin so that your plugin can run without error. Now in this case, for an example, I'm using an external jar located in this folder called general.jar, and I've returned an array filled with that path name. If I had more than one external jar, I would add extra elements, and each one would be a new file name that would be loaded by Logviewer. I've also added that jar to the libraries of the project so that the project can compile. And then finally, there's a create tab. Create tab returns the actual tab. The tab is something that extends JPanel. So create tab basically returns the JPanels it returns the JPanel that's shown in the tab. Now, I return a new tab, but if you want, you could create a tab the first time, and then subsequent times you return a reference to the tab. It just depends on what you need for your particular tab application. So the third and final required Java file is a class that extends tab. As you can see, tab is an abstract class that extends JPanel. So you're actually extending JPanel. And these are the abstract methods. In NetBeans, it's really nice because I could create a JPanel, and this JPanel I can use the GUI builder to add buttons and other features. And then all I needed to do was go over here and change this to tab and import it, and then implement the abstract methods. So here is the import, there it extends tab, and here all the abstract methods are implemented. And this is really convenient just to create a new JPanel using the NetBeans GUI builder, and then just to change a few lines to make it a tab. You could also extend tab by yourself without using the GUI builder. You could type it all up in code, but that would be annoying, and you couldn't edit your GUI as easily. But you could do that if you want. So in this case, these are the abstract methods that you must implement in your tab. OnLoad is called when the tab is loaded, is the first function called. OnFocus is called whenever the tab becomes visible when you switch to it. OnBlur is called whenever you switch away from the tab, so it's no longer visible. OnClose is called when the tab is closed by the user. OnLogClear is called when the log file currently in view is cleared, and OnLogSet is called when the structure of the log file is specified and the user starts opening logs. OnTableSelect is called with the index of the row selected when the user clicks a row in the table, like here. For this demo, in each one of these, I've used a class and a method from general.jar. All it does is it prints out the calling method's name. I'll demonstrate that shortly. Anyways, to compile and to install the plugin, what you do is you build your jar file. So NetBeans builds my jar file by dumping it in a folder called dist inside the project, and you copy this copy that jar file into your Logviewer program directory, into the tabs folder. So you can see here I have 3 jars, and those are the 3 plugins that are loaded. And let me demo the plugin. So I could open the jar, oops, wrong folder. I'm going to open the jar by double clicking on it to open Logviewer, like here. But I'm also running it from, I decided to run it from the command line so I can show you the plugin. So look, when I loaded it, it called onLoad. It immediately called onFocus because I switched to that tab. And I switch away, it's onBlur, onFocus, onBlur, onFocus. When I set the format, onSet. When I clear, it calls clear. If there were things in the table and I click them, it'd call that. And then finally, when I close, it calls onClose. Yeah, so to re-summarize, let me delete this extra file. You need to import these two jars. You need to create 3 different files. And you need to compile as a jar file, and you drop that jar into the tabs folder inside the Logviewer program directory, and that will create your tab.